Hi, in today's session we're going to be talking about one of possibly the most secure property strategies, which is purchasing blocks of apartments. I'm going to give you a few examples as to why I think it's one of the safest strategies and why you should get involved. Now, as you know, this is sponsored by the Property Investor app, which is the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the UK. Whether you're looking for that block of apartments, whether you're looking for that below market value deal, that rent-to-rent deal, we've got them all on there. Go and check us out. So you can either go to the website, which is propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or if you've got a smartphone, go to the App Store on the smartphone and type in Property Investor and download it from there. Now let's get straight into it. Blocks of apartments. Now, if you're a property investor, you probably go through a bit of a journey, or like a stage of progression, shall we call it. You start off with a single let, a buy to let. You then potentially look to try and progress a little bit further with your property journey, because you want something a little bit more progressive, something that's going to generate you a little bit more cash flow, and therefore you may go for something like a HMO. Now, as we all know, HMOs, they have their good parts, have their bad parts, they have lots of ups and downs. One of the negatives with HMO is the volatility with tenants, the volatility with the income, whether you have void periods, whether you have bad debt, etc. But that comes with all parts of property. Now, with HMOs, obviously you've got to include the bills, and that has a negative effect on the cash flow, especially in the winter where the heating system is being utilised a lot more than what it would be in the summer. Now in 2022 we're talking of hikes in prices in utilities. We've already seen one in April. We're due to see another one in October. So this again is going to have a negative effect on the cash flow of the property. Now, unfortunately, we can't restrict the amount that the tenant uses it. We can put in places other bits such as like the thermostat, and there are other, hive, etc., which allows the temperature or the boiler to be restricted in essence. But ultimately, you can't stop a tenant from putting a little electric fan heater in their room. And now, if they use that, as you know, these little fan heaters actually chomp away at electricity, and it's actually cheaper for you to leave the gas running than it would be for them to have their fan heaters. That's a little tip for you. Now, as you progress in your property journey, like I said, you probably start with a buy to let. You find that that's going well. You want something that's going to generate you a little bit more cash flow. So therefore, you then potentially progress onto a HMO. You then may become a little bit tired from running a HMO, but you like the thought or the strategy of having multiple people in one property and generating multiple lots of income. So therefore, the next best strategy for you would be to acquire a block of apartments. Now, I'm not saying go off and buy one apartment in a block. And the reason why I say that is because there's lots of negatives surrounding that, because you're not buying the freehold of the flat, you're purchasing the leasehold interest in the flat. And as a result of purchasing the leasehold, you're then still, in essence, renting part of the building off the owner, and that is the freeholder. Now, the freeholder charges you potentially the service charge for the upkeep of the communal areas, and also a ground rent. So ultimately, again, you're paying a fee to the owner for part of their service. Now, over my time, I've bought lots of blocks of apartments. My favourite strategy is to purchase blocks of apartments. And the reason why I do that is because it kind of takes me back to my university days. When I was at university, I wasn't your average student, because I lived in a HMO in year one, and I kind of find that wasn't for me. Bit of a clean freak, shall we say? And I wanted to make sure that, when I went in the bathroom, I found that it wasn't always clean. It would take me time to clean the bathroom before I used the bathroom. And as a result, I found that I didn't like that it was eating away at my time. Now, I find that also with HMOs, in my HMOs, I make sure that we've got a higher turnaround on cleaners. So a lot of my HMOs get cleaned almost like twice a week to make sure that we upkeep a certain standard. Now, that also comes at a cost. Now, with blocks of apartments, because they are fully self-contained blocks or fully self-contained apartments, you don't have that issue. Tenants aren't worrying about, have they left stuff in the communal kitchen? Have they left stuff in the bathroom? Is the bathroom going to be left clean? Is the kitchen going to be left clean? Ultimately, the mess that they leave within their bathroom or the kitchen is their own mess. And sometimes you've got to have that comfort knowing that that's going to your own home comfort, shall we say. How many times you like walking in your own home and finding your own home comforts, even when you go on holiday. It's great to come home to your own home comforts. Now, with blocks of apartments, you get the same added benefit of the multiple income, because let's just imagine you buy a small block of 4 apartments, or you can go up to a block of hundreds of apartments. Now, let's just imagine that you're starting out and you buy a house which is converted into 2 apartments, and that's very doable. It's very achievable. If you're purchasing a HMO, you can also afford to purchase that house which has got 2 apartments in, something on the ground floor, something on the first floor. Now, why I find that this is sustainable, for lots of reasons, and let's talk through the benefits. First of all, you're not paying utility bills. So in a block of apartments, chances are that each flat will have its own electricity meter, gas meter, it'll have its own council tax banding, water rates, etc. You're not having to supply Wi-Fi, so there are no communal facilities. You may pay a communal electricity bill just to cover things like the fire alarm, etc., and the communal lighting for the hallways, but that's about it. Your outgoings are limited. Now, why I also like blocks of apartments is because you've got multiple angles to finance them. So whether you finance them as blocks, as like one title based on its income, whether you decide to title split the apartments and you finance them against each title, and allowing you to potentially increase the value of the building and refinance the property, allowing you to get some of your money back out, if not all of your money back out. Now, I've done this multiple times where I've got all my money back out. Big claim, but it does happen. So with my blocks of apartments, I'll give you an example. I bought a house, mid-terrace house, and I converted it into 2 apartments. Now, as a house, it's worth, let's say, the best part of 100 grand. As 2 apartments, it's worth approximately 150,000, because each flat has its own value. I don't have to pay any outgoings. When I say outgoings, talking about the communal, any utility bills. So the tenants will be responsible for their own consumption. They've got their own electricity, they've got their own gas. The only negative to blocks of apartments is that when a flat or an apartment becomes available or becomes vacant, the council will then start to write to you for utility or to pay the council tax for that apartment whilst it's vacant. But here's a little tip. If a tenant, or if you've got your systems in place, if a tenant gives you notice, you start advertising that flat immediately. So you create almost like a one out, one in kind of system. And that's exactly what I do. Tenant gives me notice today, I start to advertise it on Spare Room. We start to all like Open Rent, Gumtree, wherever it may be. And then off the back of that, we then advertise that property. So the moment that tenant leaves, we've got another one going in. So there's no void period, there's no break in income, but ultimately we don't also have to pay the council tax on the building. Worst case scenario, you pay council tax for a limited period whilst that property is vacant, but that's not going to be a huge amount in comparison. Now, also, you don't have to, from a hands-off and a hands-free point of view, it's a lot more hands-free, because again, you're not going to have lots of tenants calling you saying this is going wrong, that's going wrong. But on a negative side, again, I'm trying to give you the pros and cons, is that if you've got a house now converted into 2 apartments and each house has a gas boiler, potentially you run the risk of having more maintenance issues, because there's now 2 boilers as opposed to 1. But hopefully, because you're not running the cost of that, when I say running the cost, each flat will have its own gas meter, therefore you won't be paying for the running of the boilers. However, if a boiler breaks down, that's where you're going to have a slight issue with regards to maintaining the boiler or the upkeep of the boiler. But here's another little tip for you. If you have an insurance policy with someone like British Gas, for the sake of, I think it's £20 a month, you could have that boiler fully insured, so that should there be an issue, the tenant doesn't contact you, they contact British Gas. British Gas come and sort that boiler out, and you don't need to get involved. So these little hints and tips, little things that I found along the way that works for me really well. Now, from a finance point of view, blocks of apartments are brilliant, because with HMOs, lots of lenders, lots of valuers started to get a negative effect on HMOs because they're worried about overvaluing the properties, especially on a bricks and mortar versus a commercial. Now, with blocks of apartments, there is not an argument about that. It very much is, once you start to turn a house into a block of apartments, it becomes a commercial entity. As a result of that, there's no reason, there's not going to be many houses converted into apartments on that street. So you are creating a commercial product, therefore you should be able to utilise commercial finance and also commercial lending and valuation facilities. You'll find that there are lots of lenders out there, and providing that you can justify the product, providing that you've got all the correct consents in place. We're talking about planning permission, building regulations, and that's probably one of the cons creating apartments, is the fact that you have to now go off and convert the property into 2 apartments. But if you find the right property with the right layout, it can be done very easily. So when you're looking to create and convert a property into a small block of apartments, make sure you got the right property which has an easy flow. Don't start trying to create what I would call almost like a rabbit run, because I've seen lots of people do that, and ultimately you find that people don't stay in the property. So there we have it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. I could talk to you about blocks of apartments all day. If you've got any questions on wanting to create a block of apartments, etc., feel free to reach out to me. Go to my website, which is arshilahi.com/contact, and feel free to come back to me, and I'll see if I can book a call in with you just so we can have a quick chat about those. As always, guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you want to connect with me on social media, feel free to go and check me out. I'm on all the platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, you name it, we're there. So go and check me out under Arsh Ilahi. And again, feel free to say hi and let's have a chat. And I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you, and bye-bye.